Dracule Mihawk has come back into the story of One Piece as of the most recent chapter. With the warlord system officially abolished and the Navy unleashing their forces to capture them, Mihawk has made a resurgence in the narrative. And with Mihawk being thrown into political combat, comes a discussion that is as old as time within the community. How strong is Mihawk really? When it comes to power scaling in One Piece, aside from having a 70% chance of getting cancer, you are equally likely to find your share of people who just cannot seem to agree on how strong people really are. And Mihawk tends to fall into the extremes of that category. Mihawk is either one of the strongest characters in the series, easily comparable to the Yonko, or he is overrated and nowhere near as strong as people think he is. Due to the fact that Mihawk is Zoro's literal dream and goal in terms of strength, most people only look at Mihawk as an extension of Zoro rather than a person with thoughts and beliefs. In this video, I will try to tackle both sides of the spectrum. Mihawk is not only one of the strongest characters in the series, but he's a lot more complicated in terms of character than you would initially expect. I will explain to you why he is a man I gladly refer to as the Godhawk.
グランドラインに入って7日目のあの海での出来事が夢なのか現実なのか未だに頭の中で整理がつかねえでいるんだ信じきれねえんだたった一人の男に50隻の艦隊が壊滅させられたなんて
I've always maintained the stance that Mihawk is without a doubt Yonko level in strength. The main difference between a Yonko and Mihawk, however, is in the details of what being a Yonko means. You don't just have to be a beast of a fighter to be a Yonko. There are other factors like influence, territory, and underlings that all play a large part in the game. That's why almost every single Yonko crew is structured the same way. Big Mom is the Queen of Totland, which is composed of over 34 separate islands that are strewn across a great distance. Kaido is the Dark in the Shadows ruler of Wano, which is made up of various separate islands as well, and that's just what we know currently since it's important to the arcs we're reading. Both Big Mom and Kaido likely have territories outside of where they're living currently. Additionally, Yonko have huge armies at their disposal, as well as numerous commanders. Whitebeard, Big Mom, and Kaido have all been confirmed to possess everything of what I just mentioned. The only outlier is Shanks. We know he has commanders, but when it comes to territory, we don't know how much he has. We did see in a cover story with Bart that he went to one of the islands that Shanks dominates and put Luffy's flag on it. The gathering of armies, strong characters, and the fighting of other people for a common goal, like finding the One Piece, is what makes the Yonko such a huge threat to the world government. Mihawk, by disposition, is a loner. He doesn't have a crew, he doesn't have underlings, he does things for himself. He accomplished what he wanted to do a long time ago. We know from the Viver cards that Mihawk was famous in the world before the Great Pirate Era even started, and as a point of reference, the Great Pirate Era began with the execution of Roger, and that was 24 years ago. So Mihawk is currently 43, so back in time he would have been 19 or so, and he was famous back then. Much like how Luffy and the gang are kind of famous now, I would imagine. Mihawk in his journey trained constantly and challenged stronger and stronger people until there was no one left in the world that was a worthy challenger. Mihawk also gives the impression of being a well-traveled man, the first hint of this being in his interaction with Zoro in East Blue. Mihawk told Zoro that he hadn't experienced the world as it truly is, and compared to Mihawk, Zoro was a frog in a well, which is a statement followed up by saying that Zoro lived in the weakest of all of the seas, implying that Mihawk, unlike Zoro, has been to all of them in his search for strength. Which makes sense, right? If you are a swordsman on a journey to find challengers, you would sail all around the world in hopes of finding someone. We know that Mihawk casually lives within the Grand Line, but it's also possible he travels freely in the New World. After all, that will be a good place to go seeking strength. And one of the first things we learned about the New World is that almost all pirates that enter the New World either fight a losing battle and get crushed by the Yonko, or they join them. Mihawk, a lone man, traveled all of the seas and the Grand Line without much of an issue. And if it was ever revealed that Mihawk traveled to the New World by himself and came out fine, then it would add more to his portrayal. Even people who went to the New World eventually kind of got caught anyway. Ace eventually fell and went under Whitebeard, Moria stole a corpse and ran back to the Florian Triangle, and we see what's happening to the supernovas currently. Mihawk traversing the New World hasn't yet been confirmed, but I would be shocked if he hadn't at some point in time. We know One Piece is currently within Wano Kuni, which is a land composed of samurai. 46 chapters in, we still haven't heard anything concerning Mihawk or him having been there, but if Mihawk had never stepped foot in Wano, I would be genuinely shocked. So not only does Mihawk travel the world by himself as far as we know, Mihawk doesn't have a single scar or battle wound to show for all of the countless battles he's been in. Now, I'm not saying that Mihawk is going up and challenging every single Yonko and they're just backing down because that's how cool he is, because that is definitely not the case. I don't think Mihawk is stupid enough to go into Yonko territory and just challenge people, unless they are a part of his goal. Mihawk's focus is strictly related to swordsmanship, so doing that, unless it was for his goal, wouldn't benefit him at all. But the fact that Mihawk became a warlord in order to travel freely over, the front and back of the Red Line to kill time because he was bored is an indication of how confident he is in his strength, let alone what other people think of him. And when it comes to what people think of Mihawk, he has received some of the highest indirect compliments possible. He has been referred to twice as legendary. Oda, when answering an SBS question, placed Mihawk in the same vein as Whitebeard and Shanks, as a jest to a comical question concerning why people in One Piece don't hit each other in the nuts. Oda obviously plays the question off, but he puts people like the legends he claims of Whitebeard, Shanks, and Mihawk doing it in battle, and it being ridiculous to witness. And then in the canon material, Whitebeard himself, the world's strongest man and rival to the Pirate King, referred to the battle between Shanks and Mihawk as the stuff of legends, remembering it like it was yesterday. I would consider this high praise. Due to his boredom from being so strong, Mihawk became a passive and reserved character that wouldn't act much when it came to the politics of the world. And it shows as well, because people sleep on Mihawk until he decides to do something. Because we see that anytime Mihawk shows up anywhere, the characters around him are used to hype him up regardless of their status. Zeph spoke highly of and was intimidated by Mihawk. The fodder on Shanks' crew were deathly afraid of him, which isn't saying much since they're fodder, but even when Mihawk came face to face with Shanks and his entire crew, Shanks played with the idea that Mihawk came there to fight him. Sengoku was shocked when he showed up to the Warlord meeting, and at Marineford, when Mihawk simply stepped on top of a railing, all of the attention was on Mihawk. Dofi is interested in him, and we know that Dofi is one of Oda's ultimate hype tools. Even the admirals, like Kizaru and Akainu, were used to talk about how rare it is to see Mihawk do something. And what we can take from that is Mihawk is someone that Oda values highly as a character, and this is exemplified further with Mihawk's warlord status. Mihawk is the only warlord in the entire series to have had his frozen bounty hidden. Isn't that curious? What could that possibly indicate? Most people would assume that Oda is saving Mihawk for later, so that his bounty would be more impressive. The more you save and protect a character, the more likely they are to be impressive, or they're supposed to be viewed that way. In Shonen, this is kind of called the law of standards or the law of progression. The later you get into a series, the stronger enemies you're probably going to have to encounter. And bounties are a tool used by Oda to hype up an individual when we do see their bounty. We've now reached the point in the series where multiple people are over the billion berry mark. People expected that, had things gone differently, Dofi, Boa, Crocodile, and Kuma would have much, much higher bounties if they weren't frozen. If Mihawk's bounty is still hidden, and the warlords have been put back into the story, how high do you think Mihawk's will be when and if it's ever revealed? An indication of how much Mihawk would be worth might be found in how rare his title is. And this is the point in the video where I'm going to give you a more concrete answer for why I think Mihawk is Yonko level. Mihawk is one of the only 4 people in this series to have a title that takes into account the entire world in which everyone lives in. Look at the kind of company Mihawk is in. We have the world's strongest man, owner of the strongest paramecia, could have been Pirate King if he wanted to, Edward Newgate. Then we have the world's strongest creature, Mr. Can't Die, likely has the strongest zone in the series, and the current boss, Kaido. And last but not least, the world's worst criminal, son of Garp, father to Luffy, leader of the revolutionaries, and one of the most hyped characters in the series, Monkey D. Dragon. Every single character that has a world title is Yonko level confirmed or projected to be Yonko level like Dragon. Would it make any sense for Mihawk, who is in the same company, to be that much weaker than everyone else with that title to the degree that they aren't even in the same tier of strength? Let's take a look at the weapon Mihawk carries as well, because this is also something that indicates how strong the wielder of Yoru has to be. Mihawk possesses one of the 12 Saijo-O Wazamono swords. There are only 3 confirmed blades in this series that are of supreme grade quality: Yoru, Shodai Katetsu, and the Mura Kumagiri. We didn't know this at the time of Marineford, but due to recent Viva cards, it's been explained that Whitebeard possessed a supreme blade. So Mihawk's sword seems to be in pretty good company, and it gets more interesting the further you look into it. This isn't to say that every single person that has a supreme blade is Yonko level, because we have no way of verifying that. And it would be kind of odd if there were 12 Yonko level people and they all had supreme blades. You don't want an influx of Yonko level people, right? But something we can assume is that those who have supreme blades are likely to be very strong. So far in the series, when you take a look at swords, there have only been 2 confirmed people in the verse that wielded a black blade: Mihawk and the sword god Ryuma. Which is crazy when you think about it. Shanks, Whitebeard, Dark King Rayleigh, Shiryu, and every single other swordsman we've seen so far in the series, none of them have a black blade. We also know that the black blade has been a concept in the story for a long time. Zoro got Shisui and Thriller Bark, which obviously came before Marineford, and when Shanks blocked Akaino's attack that would have killed Kobe with his sword, it's not black. And neither was Rayleigh's whenever he used it during the post-time skip. These other Yonko level characters didn't reach the point in their sword mastery to have obtained a black blade, which perhaps that is an indication that black blades aren't solely about strength, but include mainly mastery. Ryuma, and this is something I recently discovered after looking into the SBS answers, from what we know of his death, he never died to someone in combat that was stronger than him. He died to an illness or a disease. We really don't know how strong Ryuma was in his prime, but something we know is that the only other confirmed black blade user in the series didn't possess a supreme grade blade. And Mihawk, in his first fight against Zoro, claimed to have the strongest black blade in the world. So even if later on in the series we find out there are more black blade users we just never knew about, their sword fails to compare to Mihawk's. Okay, so Mihawk has a dope strong sword, right? What does that all mean? Well, one of the things I've seen people who doubt Mihawk say is that unlike other Yonko, Mihawk has nothing in his possession he could use to actually harm a Yonko like Big Mom or Kaido. And we know that Yonko level characters have the capability to harm each other, which is interesting now that I think about it, because they give the benefit of the doubt to Shanks, but not to Mihawk. But I digress. Recent revelations within the series showcase why Mihawk shouldn't be doubted. Since Wano began, Lord Odin has been getting a crazy amount of hype. He was the strongest warrior in Wano, he defeated Shutenmaru, rounded up all of Curry, was on board Whitebeard and Roger's crew, had Conqueror's Haki, could read and write poneglyphs. And potentially, most important of all, he possessed Enma, the only katana to have ever been confirmed to hurt Kaido. Odin fought Kaido at some point and was able to hurt him, which puts into question the difficulty of the fight, which I think we will learn more as we get into Act 3 of Wano. But something that seems that I would put money on is that Orochi was vital in the downfall of Odin, because we kind of get that impression from Kinemon's off-screen recounting of the tale in Act 1. So even though Odin did lose, who's to say what context he lost in? Perhaps it wasn't that easy. If it was so easy, Kaido would have just gone in and done it himself, right? Makes you think. Enma was a blade that was just given to Zoro, and the expectation around Zoro's new blade is that since it's the only blade to have been confirmed to damage Kaido, that it will once again hurt him later on in the arc. This is the same Enma, by the way, which is not a black blade, is not a supreme sword, but still could hurt a Yonko. Every time a swordsman within the series gets hyped, it's an indirect compliment to Mihawk, since Oda has told us from the VV cards that Mihawk sits at the top as the strongest of all swordsmen. Considering how strong Odin would have to be in order to hurt Kaido, how could you possibly think that Mihawk wouldn't be able to do the same, if not much more? Better blade, higher mastery, Papa John's. Despite all that I've said, there is even more reason to respect Mihawk's strength, because I haven't even mentioned the greatest evidence that everyone who believes in Mihawk uses as an argument. Mihawk was a rival to Shanks, who is himself a Yonko. It's this relationship between Mihawk and Shanks that often fuels the fire between the character portrayal in the series and the fans. From personal experience, and perhaps you guys haven't had the same experience, but from my time in the community, many people value Shanks as one of the strongest fighters in the verse, if not the strongest. And whenever Mihawk is compared to Shanks, they get defensive because the characters are symbols for the next generation, and it conflicts with their personal feelings on those characters. Shanks will one day be surpassed by Luffy due to the nature of Luffy's goal, and Shanks is a Yonko. Mihawk will also one day be defeated, and Zoro will become the world's strongest swordsman. If Mihawk is being compared to Shanks in strength, then when Zoro becomes the best, you could say that he would also be Yonko level in strength, which for some reason people don't like to entertain. The affiliation of who these characters are connected with brings complications, and I think a large part of that has to do with how people in the West gatekeep Yonko status strength. The later we get into the series, the more likely we are to see Yonko level characters be defeated and replaced with new and perhaps even more and even stronger people than the Yonko. But since they are a group that are such highly respected, it seems like there's a kind of denial that this will even happen. Which, it's at this point, I think the Vivre cards offer the biggest evidence for why I think this feeling should be reconsidered. And the Vivre cards for Mihawk state, and I quote, "Mihawk looks forward to the day a swordmaster will emerge to surpass even his rival, red-haired Shanks." There are numerous implications from this statement, but let's tackle the obvious ones. First, it confirms that Shanks and Mihawk were rivals and are rivals. And there is no way of denying that this statement means that Mihawk wants to fight someone stronger than Shanks. Mihawk desires another worthy challenger that will be capable of pushing him beyond his limit so he can become stronger himself. This also means that it would take a swordmaster stronger than Shanks to defeat Mihawk in a fair fight. Because it's a foregone conclusion that Zoro will one day become the world's strongest swordsman, this can also be used to imply that Zoro might one day surpass Shanks. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Shanks and Mihawk won't be at the top of the verse forever. By the end of One Piece, everyone's top 10 will likely be shattered and replaced with characters that are growing currently and new characters that will be introduced. Now, does this mean that Mihawk is stronger than Shanks? Maybe, but I don't think that's what I would personally conclude based on the things I perceive in the story. I think currently in the series, there is no doubt that Mihawk is a better swordsman than Shanks. But if there was such a huge disconnect in power between them, I don't think Mihawk would have the respect that he does have for Shanks. I think there is a character-related aspect to Mihawk and Shanks that many people aren't comprehending. And to understand this, you have to take a close look at Mihawk. What kind of personality does Mihawk have? When we first find Mihawk, we come to realize that he is so black-pilled on life that he just aimlessly wanders around the world finding things to waste his time on. He no longer has anyone to go fight in order to increase his swordsmanship. Mihawk has no purpose. But how could that be the case? I think the answer lies in the dialogue exchange between Shanks and Mihawk whenever Mihawk first shows him Luffy's bounty. And as a recap, Mihawk shows up to the island, and the first thing Shanks asks Mihawk if he's there for a duel. And this seems to trigger quite a savage response from Mihawk. Mihawk claims that there is no point in fighting a one-armed has-been, which is a rather cruel statement to make considering we know how much Mihawk actually values Shanks. Mihawk wouldn't sail all the way across the ocean to find whatever island Shanks is currently on, show him Luffy's bounty to make him happy if there wasn't some kind of friendship or bonding there. And we know that Mihawk left Marineford as well at the height of its action because he didn't want to fight against Shanks. Plus, we know that Shanks has told stories directly to Mihawk about Luffy, hence why Mihawk knew about him to begin with, which gives the implication that Shanks and Mihawk are pretty close if Shanks is just telling him stories about Luffy. So what's really going on? If you were to ask me, I think there is some bitterness that invaded the genuine respect and friendship that Mihawk and Shanks have for one another, and I think it's mostly on Mihawk's side. The clash between Whitebeard and Shanks seems to support this as well. During their conversation, even Whitebeard was curious as the kind of person Shanks lost his arm to. And we all know his response by heart, right? Shanks bet his arm on the new generation. In essence, this also means that Shanks gave up on his own potential as a fighter and entrusted that legacy with someone else. I don't think people understand the amount of disrespect that you would feel from one swordsman to another if this happened to you. We don't know the outcome of the duels between Shanks and Mihawk, whether they were ties or if they fought each other so many times they have a win-loss record against one another. Maybe it's something we'll never find out. And that's something Shanks supporters believe to be the case. They think that Shanks was the world's strongest swordsman and that Mihawk only got his title because Shanks lost his arm. However, there's never any context to believe this conclusion. If Mihawk had never earned his title, then people would be skeptical of his rank. They wouldn't really see him as the world's strongest swordsman. And if there is one thing we've seen so far in One Piece, it's that no one, not a single person, doubts Mihawk's title. And no one has ever offered a counterclaim to anyone else being the greatest. But the importance of this topic that I'm talking about right now is to give you guys a perspective of what Mihawk would see. He finally found someone throughout his journeys who could push him to his limit and put up amazing fights. Then one day out of the blue, his greatest rival, his greatest, perhaps even his only friend, loses their arm. And it's not just any arm. It is almost guaranteed to be Shanks' good arm. If you take a look at where Shanks carries his sheath and sword, it's on the opposite side of where he lost his arm. The purpose of having a sheath on the opposite side of your dominant arm is so that it maximizes your drawing speed and coordination. That's that's like sword fighting 101. Shanks lost his arm for Luffy's potential. In the same scene where Shanks bet on Luffy, he also forfeited his rivalry with Mihawk and threw it away. Shanks took that from Mihawk. I have a hard time believing Mihawk isn't bitter or wasn't bitter at this at some point in time, and that there isn't a kind of resentment. Oh, you gave up this for this kid? And I'm not trying to conclude that Shanks got significantly weaker after losing his dominant arm, because he still does use a sword as his primary weapon, but I do think that his overall ability dropped with the sword and needed to be made up by other means. Tutoring the next generation is something I think Mihawk had a hard time dealing with until he found Zoro. What Shanks did for Luffy is the exact same thing Mihawk ended up doing for Zoro. Mihawk is trying to create someone who'd be able to fulfill his ambition. Mihawk trained someone who would one day defeat him, and Shanks inspired a kid in Luffy to fulfill, likely, Roger's destiny and things he himself couldn't do, and made a promise to get a crew equal if not stronger than his own. And it's as soon as Mihawk inspires Zoro that he gains new meaning in life. As soon as Zoro comes into Mihawk's life, he sails away to find Shanks, after who knows how long, it could have been a decade. He attends a warlord meeting despite the fact he almost never does anything ever, and he takes action at Marineford when everyone else thought he would do nothing. Mihawk became a teacher and a caretaker. Zoro and Perona are symbolically Mihawk's family, and I think this metaphor is accurate. Mihawk becomes the strict male figure in Zoro's life while also becoming the substitute Moria for Perona. And we know from the SBSs that Perona thought of Moria as her father. Mihawk replaced and filled in the gap for those missing elements for Perona. He did almost all of the cooking while he was there. He took care of her for a full 2 years. And in the cover pages, we can see that Mihawk is eagerly reading news about Luffy and Zoro while chilling with Perona. We also see that Mihawk is concerned about Perona's well-being after realizing the warlord system would collapse. I believe firmly that it's a part of Mihawk's character arc to realize that despite the fact that Shanks gave up on himself, it was the right decision. Which is why I also disagree with people who say that Mihawk will be defeated by someone other than Zoro. And Shiryu is often brought up as an example of this, but this just seems so full of holes to me. One, I don't think Shiryu is strong enough to even take down Mihawk. Not fairly, at least. We know that Shiryu is going to be strong. But compare Shiryu's plotline and character to the amount of work Blackbeard has going for him to pass Shanks. Is there any connection between Shiryu and Blackbeard that is symbolic towards the growth rate of, let's say, Shanks and Mihawk or Luffy or Zoro? The answer is no. Shanks and Blackbeard have a history with one another, and both characters are heavily intertwined with Luffy. Blackbeard is all but responsible for Ace's death at this point since he started everything, and if Blackbeard defeats Shanks, it would directly fuel the rivalry between Luffy and Blackbeard that started on that mystical day in Jaya. Shiryu and Zoro haven't even met each other once. They don't even know what the other's name. It would be nonsensical to sacrifice the relationship and build-up between Mihawk and Zoro that has been going on for over 2 decades to just replace it with Shiryu. Some people say, in counter to this, that they cannot see Mihawk and Zoro fighting because Mihawk is Zoro's mentor. But once again, I don't think that's a valid argument. Mihawk and Zoro were never enemies. Zoro never hated Mihawk or saw him in a negative light. And it's the same with Mihawk and Shanks. Mihawk doesn't hate Shanks, does he? But he fought him anyway. Zoro fighting Mihawk is about ambition and respect as a swordsman more than it's about an antagonistic resolve. If Zoro doesn't defeat Mihawk, it would invalidate and break the promise both characters made to one another. Mihawk promised Zoro that he would remain at the top of his condition until the day Zoro would come back to challenge him. Mihawk can't do that if he's defeated. And with Shiryu's new acquisition of the Devil Fruit, the invisible no mi, I think it further solidifies the concept that Shiryu is going to be the final test before facing Mihawk for Zoro. Out of all of the hockey types that the Straw Hats have, you can point to certain types being not as trained for others. As an example, Sanji's armament hockey isn't necessarily amazing, and Zoro's observation hockey isn't amazing either. They both need to get better in some regard, or find something to overcome that weakness. In order to defeat and win against an invisible swordsman whose attacks you cannot see, you would logically assume it would require some kind of sixth sense or great observation hockey to counter. I also surmise that Mihawk's epithet is more evidence you can use to point to as why this is necessary for Zoro. Dracule, Hawk Eyes, Mihawk is a name you would attribute to someone who could basically see everything, who's not fooled by anything. Mihawk's original nickname was supposed to be clairvoyant. The definition of clairvoyant is a person that has a supernatural ability to perceive events in the future or things beyond the normal sense. Mihawk seems to be a prime candidate for someone who has some of the best armament hockey in the verse, as well as who has some of the best observation hockey in the verse. With that clairvoyant background in his Hawkeye's epithet, Mihawk can most likely see the future, and perhaps to an even greater extent than someone like Katakuri, and maybe it's the explanation for why he's never been hurt, or has no scars rather. In order for Zoro to prepare himself for someone of Mihawk's caliber, Zoro will need to defeat someone whose abilities will train his senses so that he isn't a sitting duck against Mihawk's vision. And I think Shears is perfect for that. Now, you could also make the case that Mihawk might have Conqueror's Haki as well. Whitebeard, Shanks, Big Mom, Kaido, all of them have been confirmed to have Conqueror's Haki, and Dragon is implied to have Conqueror's Haki due to Garp's dialogue about Luffy at Marineford, where he surmised correctly that Luffy was born with it. So it kind of seems hereditary. So we have every single character with a title possessing the Haki of Kings, and every single Yonko so far. Why would the man who sits at the top of all swordsmen not also possess that? I don't think it's necessary, by the way, for this to be true, but given everything we know in the series, it would make the most sense for this to be the case. If people like Katakuri can have Conqueror's Haki, Dofi can have Conqueror's Haki, and Chen Zhao can have Conqueror's Haki, then like Mihawk's easy. So all in all, we are looking at a man who has the strongest Black Blade, a supreme grade sword, who is rival to a current Yonko in combat ability, who is still being saved by Oda for future greatness, and he has top tier versions of virtually every Haki except for probably Conqueror's. For me, it's obvious what their answer is whenever you're talking about how strong Mihawk is, but there are three go-to arguments that people use to deny this, and they are: Jozu blocked Mihawk's attack, Vista stalls Mihawk at Marineford, and Mihawk said that he wanted to measure the distance between the warlords and Whitebeard. And I have answers or suggestions for all of those arguments. Let's tackle Diamond Jozu first. People seem to be under the impression that Jozu blocking Mihawk's attack meant for Whitebeard indicates that Mihawk's slash is either weak or nowhere near the level of Whitebeard, but this seems disingenuous on multiple levels upon analysis. So Jozu is able to block the attack, but if you look at the panels, he doesn't cover his entire body in diamond, and the parts of his body that aren't covered in diamond are roughed up after encountering Mihawk's slash. The first thing I think we can say from this, from the get-go, is that this is not a representation of Mihawk's strongest attack, not in the slightest. Mihawk casually throws this attack out with one hand, and we see him do this multiple times later as he's testing Luffy during the war. But even considering that, there are those who doubt that the world's strongest swordsman is capable of cutting diamond. And if you believe that Mihawk isn't capable of cutting diamond, then by proxy, there is no swordsman in the world capable of doing so, because it's been established that Mihawk is at the peak of all swordsmen. So do you believe that other people who use a sword can cut diamond? Can Shanks not cut Jozu? Can Big Mom with her sword not cut Jozu? Surely there is another explanation, but what is it? We learned in One Piece that master swordsmen choose what they want to cut and cannot cut materials they do not wish to cut. And to give you greater perspective into this, look at this clip from Zoro's fight against Daz Bones.
いいかい? 世の中にはね、何も切らないことができる剣士がいるんだ。何も切らないってのは呼吸を知れってことなのか。それが鋼鉄をも切る力。聞こえるぞ。あいつの鋼鉄の呼吸。刀に意志が伝わる。 次で完全に息の根を止めてやる。
Zoro chooses to not cut the leaves because he didn't want to, but he chooses to cut the stones by attuning his breath to that stone. It's his will, it's his intent and fighting spirit that allows him to do that. This same scene can be used to argue why Mihawk's first blow didn't cut Jozu. And to give you further context, let's take a look at later on Marineford. When Mihawk is chasing Luffy again at the end of the war, Daz Bones shows up using his Steel Fruit and is able to absorb a slash from Mihawk intended for Luffy. But whenever Mihawk sees this happen, the very next attack he uses, he instantly cuts down Daz Bone and one-shots him. So obviously Mihawk is able to cut steel at will, but it is because Mihawk wants to cut steel that he does it against Daz Bones. We never get to see Mihawk attack Jozu twice. It's only the first time. This doesn't even take into consideration the fact that many lower level people have block attacks from those who are significantly stronger than him. No Haki Luffy was able to tank a blow from Buddha Sengoku. Jinbei was able to block both Akainu and Big Mom. A Gear third attack and Sanji's, Diablo Jambe was able to clash equally with Big Mom. So the end picture is that to say that Mihawk is not good because Jozu was able to block attack is something that doesn't really add up in the larger context of the series. People are able to do impressive things, but that doesn't mean that it takes away from the other combatant if they aren't trying. Which brings me to talk about the Vista argument. Many people say that because Vista was able to stall Mihawk, that it indicates Vista is near Mihawk in strength. Yet it is very obvious from the fight that Mihawk's heart is not in the fight. He spends most of it commenting on how lucky Luffy is, and then we get an indication that they went at it off screen as Luffy ran away. Mihawk, from his history, is a person whose fighting strength is equal to how much of a shit he gives. Whenever Zoro fought Mihawk, what happened? Mihawk could have finished everything off in one attack at the beginning, if he had wanted to. But he let Zoro use everything against him and show him what he was capable of. And Mihawk wasn't trying at all, and he defended himself. If Vista was getting in Mihawk's way, then unless Mihawk wanted to end the fight fast, he would just continue to parry until he either wanted to win or do something else. We even see that Vista views coming into the fight Mihawk as his direct superior when they first cross blades. And later we see Mihawk suggest that they finish the fight at a different point in time, which is probably out of respect because Mihawk does seem to have respect for Vista. Curiously though, Mihawk never intentionally hurt any one of Whitebeard's commanders during the war, which is something of note. Continuing on though, we know that Mihawk has a certain respect for Sir Crocodile, and after Daz Bones gets one-shot, Crocodile himself clashes with Mihawk. The same Crocodile who also got stomped by Luffy for going after Whitebeard. Does that mean Mihawk and Crocodile are on the same level? No, not even close. We even saw later that if Mihawk was playing around with Luffy, if Luffy had committed to the fight, his arms would have been gone. Mihawk has rarely shown the resolve to fight seriously. He spent years not caring, and I think people underestimate that part of his character. And last but not least, the fact that Mihawk viewed himself differently than Whitebeard is used as an argument that Mihawk acknowledges he is weaker than Whitebeard and is not Yonko level. But go back and take a look at Mihawk's dialogue before he attacks Whitebeard, and I think you'll find that there could be a different meaning to his words. Mihawk claims that he wants to measure the true distance between the warlords and that man. Whitebeard at this current point in time is seen as Whitebeard, the legend. The same man who could have been Pirate King if he had just wanted to be Pirate King. And we know from the get-go, after Mihawk's introduction, that Mihawk even acknowledges that becoming the Pirate King requires more than becoming the world's strongest swordsman. So Whitebeard is already, from that standpoint, something that is seen above that level. Whitebeard, even from the perspective of other Yonko, is put into a different realm. Is that something we should use against those Yonko? I think what Mihawk was truly measuring was the difference between warlords and the legacy that is Whitebeard. Even someone like Big Mamu saw Whitebeard as being the strongest Yonko, where if she had the giants, she would have even beat Whitebeard. Kaido also seems to have placed respect for Whitebeard as well, Even Sengoku at the beginning of the war said that Whitebeard was the strongest man alive, putting respect on his title. Many people like to act like Whitebeard was much weaker than all of the Yonko during Marineford, but I think a lot of this opinion is formed due to the fact that Whitebeard went down in the pre-time skip, and the fighting feats in the post-time skip are being exponentially increased as shonens evolve over time, so Whitebeard looks worse compared to the other Yonko. Even though Whitebeard was sick and old, I think you can still make the case that he was the strongest living Yonko at that point in time in Marineford, and that if other Yonko had been drawn in the pre-time skip, there wouldn't have been much of a difference. In fact, maybe it would have planned out worse. Regardless, something that I mentioned at the beginning of this video is highlighted in Mihawk's attack. A Yonko is not determined by their own strength. It includes their influence, territory, and allies. Whitebeard was protected by his crew from admirals and Mihawk alike, and it's this fact that separates a Yonko from a bunch of people playing on their own team. Mihawk didn't even use a named attack or his strongest. If he was truly testing just a difference in strength, then he would have approached it as such. It's due to this that I think Mihawk's test against Whitebeard is oftentimes misconstrued by the community to use as a slight against him. At the end of the day, though, it's up to you to decide things for yourself. This is my interpretation of the series and my interpretation of Mihawk. And if you feel differently, feel free to comment on it. But hopefully, through my love letter to Mihawk, you have come to realize why I refer to him as the Godhawk. Who knows what's to come from Mihawk in the future, but this is how I see things currently. I don't think I'll be eating my words, though. So thank you all for watching, and have a nice day.